topic?
Yeah, year-end list.
The records I've acquired that I've newly acquired are for the most part things I was familiar with previously.
Now, in my case, I mean, I have a lot of new acquisitions. I'm not a list person, too much typing.
Mm,
I've just opened up my library collection and saw that I bought over 10 new reissues of library records.
okay. I'll say that I appear to be the list maker among the three of us, and I'm also the one who buys new releases. So I bought enough that I put them into sort of three categories. One is like heavy stuff, heavy music, punk and hardcore, and metal. One that is everything else, and then one category for reissues. We're going to post our lists such as they are below this episode, I guess, but I'm just going to call out one from each of my categories here. So the first one from the heavy music list, it's maybe an obvious one, but this is a hell of a record. This is Blood Incantation's new one called Absolute Elsewhere. These guys they're a tech death band, and I'm not really much for technical death metal. These guys are these guys are something else. Their previous record was great too, from 2019. But this is just more in every way. And they're kind of like, yes, there's definitely death metal on here, but they recorded this at Hansa Studios in Berlin, I think it is, like where tons of the great like krautrock records were recorded in the 70s. And they actually recorded with a member of Tangerine Dream. And there's all these, and so it's like death metal, but it's also ambient electronica and krautrock and Pink Floydy passages. I believe I saw an interview with the band, and they even refer to like one portion of the record as like the Pink Floyd part or something like that, which I just love. So anyway, this is a killer record. The art's really something too. Look at that.
Do they bust out a Mellotron?
Yep, there is Mellotron.
Sweet.
Great record, and there's a lot going on in it. And if you get into all like these sort of ancient aliens shit, well, this is definitely for you as well. Moving on, this is my choice from the non-heavy stuff. It's actually like my list is a really jazz heavy list, but I chose a non-jazz record just because this is a really cool record. Magic Brother and Mystic Sister. This is their second album. They are named after a gong song, which gives you some sense of where they're coming from. There's definitely that in their sound. There's some Steve Hillage, Canterbury kind of stuff. Just garden variety, prog of various kinds. Also some folk and some jazz and a little bit of rock. Two people from Barcelona are like the main people behind it. But this is like, they put out two records this year. This is the first one they put out. See, part one. Part two just came out. Really cool music, and some of it's kind of, you could see it being on a soundtrack maybe. It's got that cinematic vibe to it. Anyway, really good stuff. And for reissues, I chose this reissue of Nausea. And these are, so Nausea was a 90s, like a really influential 90s crust band, like from New York, which has never really been known for crust. Um, it's more known for like knuckle dragging, tough guy bullshit. But yeah, Nausea from New York City, and they were fucking awesome. They sort of, they made famous like the sort of dual vocals thing, that a lot of other crust bands adopted after them. One male, one female. They were pretty heavy as well. Like there's a lot of metal in their sound. Like, and for me, there's a lot of venom in their sound in particular. And this is a compilation of two singles, which aren't super hard to find and they're not super expensive. But it's nice to have these two singles from back in the 90s just on one record. What do you got, Jackson?
Oh, okay. So I decided to focus on my reissue buys for library music. And so this is my first library acquisition, and it is Dracula's musical cabaret uh, by the Vampires of Dartmouth. It's a fake pop band that's doing the soundtrack to a non-existent movie.
Okay.
Okay. And it has a lot of sound effects and some scary parts. It's really over the top. There's primitive synthesizers. There is sexual parts and loungy parts and spooky parts and psychedelic parts. And DJs love this record, so they can inject some psychedelia into their set, right? It is a new release on Finders Keepers, so that is a sign of quality. And it seems that these guys were all accomplished musicians and they wanted to show off their skills and plug into the horror genre, movie genre niche, even though this film was never made. So, um, it's also supposed to be, there's all these film references to like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Polanski's Fearless Vampire Killers.
How does it stack up compared to Vampiros Lesbos?
Well, it's uttered in the same sentence. The people
Okay.
that like Vampiros Lesbos would like this, but I think Vampiros Lesbos is a much superior record. I mean, I would recommend this, but you have to be in a certain mood to sort of absorb the over-the-topness that exists. And my second one is Jungle Obsession, which is from 1971. This is 71. And these guys are two main guys creating this music. They were Muzak composers. They were commissioned to do this record and sort of show off their skills. So a lot of it's uh, abstractly influenced by the Jungle Book, that Disney movie and
Hmm.
soundtrack, but it's nothing like it because these are jazz players, very accomplished, that create some compositions that are very fairly intricate and rhythmic. And then on both sides, there's very long tracks that are improvised, and you can just tell they're sort of made from nothing. Or maybe the situation where they played it once and they said, let's record it. And they have a quiet part and a loud part. But those are the best parts, really, is this jazz rock sort of improvisation. They use synthesizer, it's somewhat psychedelic. It's got a little bit of exotica mixed in, and there are animal sound effects and a women's choir in parts. So this flows really well, and this is my second choice for library album of the year. It was recommended by Ben at Tunnel Records. Oh God, I want to pay back for that mention. At least a free t-shirt. My first choice, and by far my favorite, is the Neptune collection by the Entourage Music and Theater Ensemble. And this is funny because although they compose for theater and dance, a lot of it's for dance, and in some cases they're involved in the dancing while they're playing the music. This Entourage has been around from 70 to 83. There's primarily two guys. They added a third guy. They're all jazz players. Okay, so they've fleshed out their band. It's got, full electric band plus viola and some horns, but you would never know it because they are so understated in what they do. And that's initially what attracted me to this album. So, a lot of it's improvised, which is great. They consider these tunes adaptable compositions, interchangeable for dance and theater. So, sort of an open-ended thing. But really, what is best about this is their musical liberation. There's just a freedom, a sense of freedom in their improvisations that you don't hear in jazz. You hear chops in jazz, and here you're actually hearing them listen and evolve something, which impresses me incredibly. The Entourage Music and Theater Ensemble. They have three releases that I have, and I think they have a live release as well. This is a compilation of their selected tunes well, it was released in 1975. So, and that's it. I love them to death. And Eric, you have some records you discovered?
Or just purchased. Basically, my criterion was, did it come in shrink wrap or not? And so I have three records that came in shrink wrap, which is actually sort of unusual for me since I buy hardly anything new. But the first the first one is from 1980, the fabulous Half Mute by Tuxedo Moon, a band that really never got the respect it deserved. Their first two albums and EPs are phenomenal. Um, this has some very unconventional instrumentation. There's a violinist, a saxophone player, and a drum machine and bass. And those are the main things, all combining to make angsty sort of quasi-goth music of all things. So it sounds impossible and yet it works. Um, there's any number of songs that I've listened to plenty over the last few decades, but I somehow didn't actually have a physical copy of the record. So
How would you describe the vocals?
angsty would be the very high strung and nervous sounding, and kind of like somebody who has been chased down a dark alley and has his voice is cracking. What else could I possibly say about it? Yeah, no, just three guys on this record. Fabulous bass playing, really kind of it's very punctuated in style. Anyhow, nobody like them. Once upon a time on Ralph Records, so they wound up all living in Belgium, I think, because they ran out of money there.
Would you consider them dark wave or proto dark wave?
Ah, that's a good call. Yes, I guess that's what I was getting at with the goth thing. It's actually more dark wave. That term is far more apt. Okay, shrink wrapped item number one. Item number two is the unpronounceable CHBB, or I guess you can pronounce it. It just doesn't yield a single flowing word. And those are the initials of Chris Haas, maybe Hase, and Beate Bartel, who was a an early contributor to the Einstürzen und Neubauten project. And these two folks, Hase and Bartel, uh, went on to form a group that has a certain amount of underground dance club notoriety called Liaison Dangereuse. Very fond of foreign languages. They're German, but they had to go for French there, and sing a song in Spanish, no less. So if you have a chance to pick up Los Niños del Parque by Liaison Dangereuse, go for it. a banger, as they say. Anyway, this stuff is electronic experimentation that doesn't gel into something danceable, which is only a good thing in my opinion, because there's only so much of that kind of four on the floor, plodding, repetitive stuff that one can take. This is far more varied in its the stylistic directions that it takes, and they've got some they've got a bunch of titles here in French once again. It sounds a bit like the Ike Yard I talked about on another episode. So if you want a bunch of cranky old machines chugging away and all kinds of sort of vocal snippets from various sources being mixed in to create a kind of oppressive atmosphere. This bit of, I guess, early industrial music. I hate to use the term, but uh, it is
Why?
apt.
You said banger.
You're right. I clearly have no shame. So this 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 is an industrial banger, yo. That's how. Then I actually do have something that is not only from this uh, century and millennium, but even this decade and almost year, which is Bellbury Polly, The Path. This is from 2023, I think. So close enough and up to the minute by my standards. Bellbury Polly has been around for a couple decades, and they make music that seems to be inspired by sort of spooky library records, I guess would be the best way to describe it. On this record, somewhat uncustomarily, there's there's sort of a through line and a narrative component that's sort of like a sounds like a somebody making a motivational record, sort of like an Alan Watts kind of Zen voyage or something, except things have gone wrong and it's somewhere in the haunted English countryside, and there's like slightly malignant elves involved. Normally, this guy who runs Ghostbox Records, and this is his project, does stuff. It's a very synthesizer driven, but here he's assembled a little band, and there's people playing various instruments, and you've got some flute and the like, uh, livening up the proceedings.
Is there any inclination of what the songs are about?
Well, the path is sort of this master metaphor for, life and its journeys, a motivational record that had gotten off track because the path doesn't lead anywhere.
Mhm.
So
It's like a haunted motivational seminar.
that's a good way of putting it. Yes, a haunted motivational seminar, and that's my third choice for this year's sort of hot records.
Hot stuff.
Rap metal,
Jump,
Adult contemporary, smooth jazz,
yacht rock,
yacht rock, probably bangers.
jump.
Adult contemporary, smooth jazz,
yacht rock.
yacht rock.
Probably bangers.